I think it's really difficult to separate them, to make a case for one over the other. With a certain degree of balance, the topic of conversation I want to focus on is the top three, but more pertinently, that one automatic position that's up for grabs. And now, therefore, is it a straight battle between the two relegated sides, Southampton and Leeds?
Feels a bit boring, this, because it feels like we've been setting this up for weeks and weeks and weeks. And
mate, you're the perfect person to counter this argument. And that's exactly what I want from you in around about 2 minutes' time. I want you to give the reasons as to why Ipswich will bounce back from the disappointment of Deepdale. And I'm not cut and dry that this is over. It's a conversational starter, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. First of all, Sam, our premise, which has been our premise for a long time, is that Leicester are going to be champions. They've come out of the transfer window. We mentioned the possibility of Dewsbury Hall being sold. That didn't happen. Since we last spoke, Sam, they've got 6 more points. They've got 8 more goals. They're now 11 points clear of second. And we've joked about these projections. The projection's 110 points, Sam. There's only 16 games to play now, so it is coming into focus. This whole discussion is based on the premise that Leicester are champions-elect. Are you okay with that as a starting point?
Did my best to create a little bit of conversation about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I think it was prior to Leicester Ipswich, but even given that the spoils were shared. Is that a phrase? I haven't said that for a while, but you get my drift. Even though that was a draw, I just thought Leicester kind of played in about third gear. I thought it was so easy for him in the first half, and Ipswich fully warranted their point, on the balance of the play and the chances and everything else. So I'm not diminishing that achievement, but I just thought Leicester, even in that 1-1 draw, just looked class. And it was interesting hearing the kind of noise coming out of the support after the previous game, that not everyone was completely enamored with Maresca's style of play. That was fascinating, really, because when I've seen them, invariably it's been away from home. They've been exceptional and really exciting as well. I know at home sometimes when it's you're playing against a deep set defence and it can be frustrating. It can be a little bit sideways. I get that because, there's a little bit of that. When you're a player, you don't want to force the ball. You don't want to go for that kind of through the eye of a needle pass because you risk giving it away. So I get that. And that can be frustrating for the home supporters, but absolutely a 5-0 away from home against a team who can defend, can't they, Stoke? They can shut out. That was a sensational win at the weekend, which just clarifies in my mind that they're going to romp to the title.
So this is the first time this season we've had everybody at 2 points per game. I suspect to have 4 teams at 2 points per game at this point in the season. I don't know if there's any statisticians watching or listening. I doubt that.
Fev, go on, son.
I doubt this has ever happened before, to have so many teams on the 2 points per game. So talk to me first about Southampton and about Leeds. I mean, we're rinse repeat for Southampton. We set this up a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? And said, look, the next couple of games, this run is looking to continue. Rotherham, bottom of the league, 21 undefeated now. But Leeds United have won 5 games in a row now. They move on to 2 points per game. How are you feeling about these two, particularly? Just pit them against one another, because by all logical financial and squad reasons, that is the conversation, even though you want me to try and give you some hope in 2 minutes' time.
I think it's really difficult to separate them, to make a case for one over the other. Obviously, Southampton have been on this incredible run over a longer period of time. I think they've got superb depth. I think they've been relatively fortunate with injuries, if memory serves me right. And they've added...
It's just Stewart they've been unlucky with, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, where would they be with him in the ranks as well? How many more points would they have accumulated? But to add Brooks as well, in the window, he very nearly created a goal for Adam Armstrong at the weekend. What I'm kind of getting towards is, if Southampton lost a few big players, would they be able to deal with that better than Leeds United? I think there's an argument for that. Leeds fans absolutely in the comments tell me that I'm completely wrong. And I know at the moment they're doing it without Dan James and Pascal. Help me out here. Strap. Those two are out, aren't they? And I know it's only short term, possibly. And they've had to just rejig it, haven't they? With Ampadu dropping in. Gruever's come in and done really well. Wasn't across the game, particularly against Bristol City, but I know they were really good value for the win. So they've been able to cover for those absences pretty well. If anything, they may be looking superior at the moment with those kind of little alterations. But I don't know. It just feels to me that Southampton have just got maybe a little bit more depth. But I'm scratching around here because I think Leeds' 11 is outstanding. I really do. That deficiency on the road obviously was what was separating them between them and the top clubs in the second half of the season. It looks, for all intents and purposes, that's going to be arrested. So absolutely, I can't call who's going to make it between the two. I wouldn't be surprised whoever finishes second. Southampton have to go to the 4 in the top 5, if that makes sense, because they're obviously in there away from home.
I think that's the key part of the discussion. What you're now on to, who's got to play who.
I'm glad I got there then. So that could have a bearing on it. I mean, like I said, I was scratching around for reasoning, and it's just when I look at some of those Leeds United substitutes in comparison to Southampton, I think, could they walk in and play a dozen games? And at the moment, you've got like Creswell there, you've got like Shackleton there, Byram. This is off the top of my head. Obviously, Pirro, Ruta, Bamford. That's a lovely problem for them to have. But yeah, absolutely, it's worth highlighting those Southampton fixtures and saying again. I think I said it on last week's podcast. The only victory against a team over 14th away from home was at Hull City, a late winner, wasn't it? From his name, Fraser. So yeah, we don't really know how Southampton are going to serve up in those top games. Another point I just wanted to finally make on Southampton, obviously an amazing run, and you wouldn't expect it to be too different from this. There's been 8 clean sheets in this run, but they've only conceded over 1 goal in 1 fixture in a 2-2 draw at Preston.
In the 21 games?
In the 21 games. That's the only
0
time.
0 or 1?
0
wow.
or 1, yeah. So I just thought, we spoke so much early part of the season about the attacking prowess and where everyone was going to fit in and them looking shaky defensively. Can't really angle that against him. And that's not, a plus in their column and a negative across in Leeds' column, because they're equally as good defensively. But I just think that was worth highlighting about Southampton, having married both sides of the game.
So you want me to be positive about Ipswich? Well, I mean, I think we've set it out, haven't we? That the momentum is with Leeds and Southampton, isn't it? The financial power, the squad power is with Leeds and Southampton. You'd say maybe fixture-wise, you'd rather be Ipswich or Leeds than Southampton. But in terms of admirable, helpful fixtures, that doesn't put Ipswich over Leeds, does it? Because Leeds have got home fixtures, having played the difficult games away in the first half of the season. I can make lots of excuses for Ipswich, Sam. We can say they had the hard run of games, and then when the hard run of games came and they drew against QPR and Stoke, they had injuries and suspensions then with Morsey out and Hurst out and Burgess away and all of that good stuff. You can say it was a bit unlucky at Preston that the first goal's deflected, the second goal's offside, and they lose their heads playing out from the back again from the third one. So you can say all of those things, but the results speak for themselves, don't they, Sam? You can only have one period in a season of winning once in 8 games, can't you? And then you sort of look ahead at it, and it does stack up all right after the West Brom game, because West Brom is never easy with Corberon. But then look, Millwall, Swansea, Rotherham, Birmingham, Plymouth, Bristol City, Cardiff, Sheffield Wednesday, Blackburn. That's a long run of quote winnable games there. So Kiefer Moore straight in and looks like he's stepped in, obviously scored 2 goals on debut. So if I take all the logic out and we can go for an intangible like momentum, if I'm allowed to, and didn't we say, Sam, for 18 months, 12 months, let me rephrase that, if Ipswich were in a coin flip game, they won it, didn't they? Whereas at the moment, when Ipswich are in a coin flip game, right now they're losing it. So that would be my argument, whereas all logic says it's between Southampton and Leeds. Have you got a counter?
No, I just think if you look back over the last couple of months or whatever it's been, the last 8 games, they're incredibly difficult fixtures that Ipswich have had. I don't know if we spoke a lot on that. I think they were our cause for concern at one point because of the fixtures, maybe very early on in this run. But if you look at the games that they've lost, it's only really Saturday that was quite unexpected, although I think I did tip Preston. But you know what I mean. There's no travesty in losing at Leeds. Is that the only other defeat in this run? Obviously the cup defeat against Maidstone, but the Norwich draw wasn't there. They won the game against
the two horrible ones are drawing to QPR and Stoke, because they're the fixtures where you're playing teams that are, lower down in the table, where if one of those games was a win, we know all this would be different and they'd be in second. But when you see the overtake get made and the momentum and everything else I've mentioned, you can't fail to kind of not necessarily come to this conclusion, but at least raise it as a conversation point, like you were suggesting.
I suppose it's just whether they can rally themselves to go on another incredible run like they did, in the early part of the season. I think, absolutely valid point to highlight the new strikers. That if Kiefer Moore's going to be out there from the off, and we spoke about the potential of bringing in new strikers last week, it does give Ipswich the option. I think you have to with Kiefer Moore. He's a bit like kind of Matt Smith in that regard, that you can't really play down the sides for him because he won't get there. So you either use him as a plan B.
So, Sam, I think we saw it already. Sorry to interrupt. All the cutbacks to Chaplin are now going to be little dinks to the back post, aren't they?
I mean, that ball in from Leif Davis. I mean, if there could ever be, I think it was Leif Davis, if there could ever be a more perfect delivery with that little bit of kind of backspin on it, curling away from the goalkeeper and defender. So they can play a little bit more direct. I don't know if Kieran McKenna will want to do that, but Hladky's been getting himself into increasing difficulties playing out. That seems to have been a bit of a feature of the last few weeks. So it does give them that option, and interesting to see where Al Hamady fits in. And I saw something in one of the local papers about the amount of goals being conceded early. And I don't know if it completely runs true in terms of being that problematic, because I think there was 5 in a row during a sequence early part of the season, but they are conceding.
Like first shot the opponents had as well, not even early goals. It was first shot.
Yeah, so it seems like that's kind of subsided over the last few weeks, but I think they've still conceded the most in the opening 15 minutes of games in the entire division. To flip it, only Leicester have scored more in the last 15 minutes, but it's just whether, I suppose, you can sustain that and keep having that bounce back ability to coin Ian Dowie. So I suppose Burgess is going to be back, isn't he?
He will be.
I'd imagine he'll have landed by now, so he could be involved in the next game, because that'll be all the Australian boys on their way home, if I've done my research properly. And I suppose the manager would likely reintroduce him after the I was going to say horror show. It's a bit harsh, but Edmonton's first half the other day, it's quite likely that he'll be reintroduced, I would imagine. So I think there's things to be positive about, but I think the reality is a lot of it's going to be down to his ability to get them functioning and get them going again. Sometimes it's as simple as that, really. Can you get them on a roll again.
Brilliant stuff, Sam. I'm going to close out this segment by saying, and I'll put my Ipswich hat down to the side. Look, we're either going to get a potential really great head-to-head between Leeds and Southampton, potentially ending on the last day of the season with Leeds versus Southampton, which could be just sensational, or we get that plus another team. So
I know where my money would be then.
I
know where it would go. You couldn't back against Leeds, could you? Last day of the season against Southampton. Could you imagine?
Could be incredible. We'll wrap that up there, but get your views down there in the comments.